Hi guys, how are you? Hello, welcome. So I hope you're all doing well today. Today's an interesting one. I'm interested in this because I can see that it affects a lot of women, particularly during the cycle. And it can be an easy fix if this is a problem, and it's actually low blood pressure. So I want to talk about how through your cycle, hormones can affect blood pressure and it can actually exacerbate your symptoms. And sometimes what we do that's healthy can also cause a decrease in blood pressure. So it pays to adapt your diet and just to make sure your diet's supporting your blood pressure if you are suffering from this. It's good to get a reading if you're not sure. I mean, if you've got an at-home blood pressure monitor, it's good to get a reading. You know, normal is that 120, that kind of 120 over 80. Then as you go sort of below that and you get to kind of 90 over 60, that gets into the low range. And what's interesting is women during this part of their cycle, in their luteal phase, they do get a lower systolic blood pressure. So that systolic is the upper range. So 120, the upper number, is a systolic. And that's the amount of pressure the blood is taking to go through back to the heart, back to the venous system. So you can imagine if that drops and the pressure is not very high, you're getting less blood, less oxygen flowing to the brain. So signs and symptoms, and just think about these signs and symptoms for a moment, because these do affect a lot of women. Now, they can affect you every day due to different reasons, so it's always good to know that some issues might not be blood pressure, but there can be other things like your thyroid. But think about your cycle and think about that luteal phase. So think about from day 14 through to your period. So that second half of your cycle, those 2 weeks, think about the symptoms you experience, and if they include anything like dizziness or lightheadedness. I get a lot of clients telling me they feel dizzy. What about nausea? I also get a lot of clients saying there's a couple of days in their cycle, particularly this later phase, when they feel nauseous. Fainting, some women even faint as well. This can be an issue. Feeling dehydrated, so having this like unusual thirst, you know, when you're drinking and you just can't seem to quench that thirst, so you just keep drinking and drinking, that can be a sign. Fogginess, that lack of clarity, lack of concentration. Maybe a tendency as well to have more accidents during that part of your cycle, to have a think. They could be minor accidents like dropping glasses, or they could actually be more serious accidents where you prang the car. So that can be a sign of that kind of low blood pressure as well. Now, another sign is the blurred vision. Blurred vision is an interesting one, because I do get clients telling me, oh, I get blurred vision during this part of my cycle. That can also be that low blood pressure. Cold but clammy hands. So the hands are kind of clammy. You might get that pale skin. I used to get that a lot at the end of a work day on the bus on the way home. My kind of like, the blood would just drain from your face, and it was just that kind of long day, that time in my cycle, not eating correctly through the day and just having high stress and probably a bit dehydrated. And I remember that ride home on the bus from the city to home, I'd be so pale and just wiped, absolutely wiped out. You might have shallow breathing, but also fatigue. But the biggest one here is depression. So low blood pressure can cause depression, and low blood pressure can happen not only in the second half of your cycle, but some women that go through menopause can get low systolic blood pressure as well. So we're looking at depression, fatigue, depression, low moods can happen when the blood pressure drops. Now, in the luteal phase, you've got that day 14 to day 28. Now, what generally happens, and this is what should happen, testosterone sort of rises a bit just before ovulation, and it peaks at around day 10 to 16. Now, testosterone is more likely to raise blood pressure. This is why men tend to have a bigger issue with blood pressure and hypertension, because of the testosterone levels. So around day 10 of your cycle to 16, testosterone peaks and it falls. Now, after ovulation, you have estrogen and progesterone going up in kind of a bell curve. So we've got ovulation here, estrogen and progesterone going up. They kind of peak around day 21 and then they come down. So it's this sort of day 17 to 26 that women can get these symptoms of low blood pressure, low systolic blood pressure, the dizziness, the hypotension. So this can be really common. Yeah, 99/70 is low. That's a low blood pressure. So it's good to actually monitor it and see what's going on. Studies have been done on this. So studies have shown that during a woman's cycle, she is more likely, day 17 to 26, more likely to have a lower blood pressure. So day 1 is obviously the first day of your cycle. And if you've got a 28-day cycle, you ovulate on day 14. If you know you ovulate any other time, just change those days in your cycle and see if they match up. So causes of low blood pressure, we've got causes of low blood pressure, we've got estrogen for one. Estrogen kind of dilates the blood vessels. So if the blood vessels are expanding, that's giving more room for blood. So that means there's less pressure, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? It also encourages nitric oxide. Now, here's the thing about nitric oxide, women and estrogen, I just want to talk about quickly. And it's cold showers. I love cold showers and cold showers are fantastic. But this time in your cycle, maybe cold showers won't be the best thing for you because they can increase nitric oxide. So and you know when you've had a cold shower, you do get that rush of blood. So just see how you feel with a cold shower. If it's not working for you, I would just omit it from that part in your cycle. But estrogen dilates the blood vessels. It causes the blood to flow. There's less pressure. Nitric oxide, it can bring blood pressure down. Then we've got progesterone. Progesterone is really interesting. It's got a big relationship with your kidneys, with blood pressure, with aldosterone. And we know that elevated progesterone, when progesterone is super high in pregnant women as well, and pregnant women can get low blood pressure, you've got lower aldosterone. And this means more excretion of sodium. So you have more sodium excretion, you're peeing more, so you've got less fluid in the body, and you hold on to your potassium, so you're more likely to have that kind of lower blood pressure. It's a healthy way to do it, and there's nothing wrong with that, but in women that are sensitive, it can cause issues. So we've got estrogen can cause low blood pressure. We've got the elevated progesterone after you ovulate can cause low blood pressure. And then we've got histamine. Now, can you remember, if you haven't seen this live a few weeks ago, I did talk about histamine in your luteal phase, and histamine can cause agitation, mood swings, allergy flare-ups in the luteal phase. But when histamine is released, and it's more, you have more histamine this time in your cycle. So this luteal phase, more elevated histamine, you're more sensitive, you're more prone to allergic reactions. You have this release, you have this contraction of smooth muscles, you have this dilation of blood vessels. You know you get that because with histamine you get kind of red. You get this increased permeability of the blood vessels. So you've got that barrier, things are going through the blood vessels, and this causes the lower BP. So this is why if you eat something that you're sensitive to, you can get that low blood pressure. You know, if you eat something, you eat it and suddenly you're like, oh, I feel exhausted. Oh, foggy, and you just can't break away from that. It can sometimes be something that you've eaten that your body's having this histamine reaction to. So look out for that. Look out for this histamine release. And if you know that histamine is a problem for you in your luteal phase of your cycle, then you want to do that low histamine diet I was talking about and just see if that supports your blood pressure and supports bringing it up. So we've got estrogen, progesterone, lower blood pressure. We've got histamine as well, can cause lower BP. We've also got issues with blood glucose, can lower your blood pressure as well when your blood glucose drops. Some people have what's a reactive hypoglycemia. So that's when your body reacts to food that you eat. And this is also more likely to happen in your luteal phase because you're more sensitive to blood sugars when you've got that when your progesterone is either super high or super low. So in the luteal phase, you're more likely to eat something. Your insulin and glucose are a little bit more sensitive, and so you're more likely to have a meal, like a big loading meal or a big carb meal, and you might suddenly get that hypoglycemia. It's a reactive hypoglycemia, and that happens after eating as well, and that can cause that extreme fatigue. This is why during your luteal phase, you want to stick to your high proteins, your fats, lower sugar, lower carb kind of diet, so you can keep your bloods nice and regulated. Your blood sugar's nice and regulated. We've also got thyroid. So hypothyroidism or subclinical hypothyroidism can also cause a lower blood pressure, and this can cause depression and fatigue and problems with energy. So I'd actually get your thyroid tested if you suffer from chronic low blood pressure. And then the last thing, I talked about this a couple of weeks ago as well, so if you missed this live, go back and have a look at it. It's brain-derived neurotropic factor. So this is BDNF, and this is really important. And this actually lowers in this second half of your cycle, so this comes down in a lot of women. Now, a telltale symptom of low BDNF is the lower systolic, but normal diastolic. So if normally you're 120/80, but then suddenly that drops to say 90/80, 100/80, especially that time in your cycle, it could be a little bit of an indication that you've got low BDNF. So go take a look at that Facebook Live I did on BDF, on brain-derived neurotropic factor, and just see if that rings any bells with you. I talk about ways to actually bring that up using certain exercises and supplements as well, such as krill oil and turmeric can help with the BDNF. So this is what can happen in your cycle, and the reason it's so important to talk about this is because I do see that there are so many symptoms that women get in this luteal phase: the dizziness, the depression, the fatigue, the low mood. And one symptom I've noticed is that early morning fatigue. So you wake from sleeping and you just feel absolutely depleted. It's like a real I've been hit by a truck kind of symptom. And that can be that low blood pressure. Now you can test, but a good thing to do is you need to amend your diet. So instead of first thing in the morning having, say, a green smoothie, because green smoothies are full of beautiful potassium, and potassium can bring your blood pressure down. Or instead of having that half a lemon in water, try having a small glass of water with about a 1/4 teaspoon of really good quality sea salt, and just have that on rising and see if that gives you that kind of boost that you need. I know I've talked about this before, the importance of electrolytes, and I did a live on this in terms of an experience I had with exercise. And I was doing long walks, and in the summer I'd take my backpack and I'd take like a big litre bottle of water, and I'd sip that litre bottle of water, and that would be gone, and I'd be probably walking for 2.5 hours, sweating a bit, then I'd drink the water. And by the end of the walk, I would always have this like massive headache. It was such a big headache, and I just couldn't figure it out. And then I started thinking about things and wondering if it was my blood pressure that was dropping. I tested and it was dropping. And so I was thinking about my electrolytes. So what I'd started doing, instead of taking a really big bottle of water, I took a smaller bottle of water and I put a teaspoon of salt in that water. So it's 500 mils salted water, and I just sipped on that on this walk, and I can't tell you the change it had. I stopped getting the headache, so I haven't had a headache since then in terms of day-to-day headache or a headache when I walk. But it keeps you hydrated, but it keeps you super energized, it keeps your energy up. So I would recommend, and particularly if you suffer from headaches as well, but if you have that kind of like hit by a bus feeling first thing in the morning, fogginess, you just can't wake up, have about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt in a glass of water. And then you want to look at omitting the high potassium foods. So just have a look at what you eat in the morning in terms of what's for breakfast. What's the first thing you do? So I mentioned already, just omit the green smoothie in the morning, just omit the lemon and water in the morning. This is if you're feeling tired in your luteal phase. And maybe add in something like a fatty. You could add in eggs and avocado. You could do eggs, bacon, avocado with some greens. If you want your greens, you can get your greens in your breakfast. But have breakfast and don't fast, and try not to have a high potassium low diet for breakfast, particularly if you feel like that in the morning. And just include those higher sodium foods. So either vegetables, like celery does have a higher sodium content, but I would use proteins and I would use fats first thing in the morning. And then keep hydrated. Keeping hydrated is key to keeping your blood pressure steady, because when you get dehydrated, your blood pressure is going to drop. So just watch your fluid through the day. In the luteal phase, we do have more need for fluid. We have that progesterone coming up. Progesterone is a diuretic. So if your cycle and your hormones are working correctly, in that luteal phase, as the progesterone comes up, you should notice that you're peeing more. And normally you are peeing out that sodium, you're peeing out the electrolytes because you're going to the bathroom so much. So this is why you need to keep hydrated through the day, but also keep hydrated with electrolytes as well. So electrolytes, a little bit of salt in water. You can have other kind of like a little bit of fruit juice or vegetable juice with the rest water, but just make sure you're getting that sodium, and it's really important. Some people on really hot days, if they sweat a lot, they will make themselves their own kind of like electrolyte drink. Now, the coconut water is good, but it is high sugar and it's really high potassium. So you want to look for that more sodium. Sodium is your energizing mineral. Potassium is your calming. Potassium and magnesium are great for anxiety. Sodium is great as a pick-me-up when your blood pressure is low. It's great for a pick-me-up when you're feeling tired, fatigued, and foggy. Whereas your potassium-based things and your magnesium-based things are more good to relax you from anxiety, agitation, that kind of thing. So in the luteal phase, if you've got that fogginess, that hit by a bus, that fatigue, go for the higher sodium. And lastly, I just wanted to talk about B12 because I get so many clients with low B12. When you're getting your B12 tested, you really want it to be like about 400. Even though 200 is within the kind of specification and realm, you're still going to get symptoms, and low B12 can cause hypotension, so that low blood pressure, chronic low blood pressure. So have a look at what your B12 is, and talk to your practitioner about supplementing, but remember that B12 is best taken in an activated form, and it's best dissolved under the tongue. Taking tablets is sometimes not as good. Under the tongue, it absorbs nicely, and you're more likely to get that kind of hit of B12 and get it up quicker. So those are the general causes of low blood pressure in your luteal phase. We're looking at progesterone, elevation of progesterone, estrogen, testosterone drops out because testosterone elevates your BP. We're looking at that kind of histamine release. So look out for allergies as well in your cycle, maybe low BDNF. And then using sodium-rich foods, maybe using salt in water to actually bring you out of that fatigue and help stabilize your blood pressure. So I hope that helped you. If you have any questions, particularly surrounding low blood pressure and how it affects your moods, please pop them below. I know I've got a few questions to answer, and I'm going to answer those in single videos, hopefully over the next couple of days. But if you've got any questions or concerns, let me know, and I will answer those for you. So have a wonderful day, and I hope that helped, and I will talk to you all soon. I'll see you all next Wednesday. Take care. Bye.